If you know how to make some of the basic hand embroidery stitches, you can combine them to create some really fun and exciting designs. Hi, I'm Kim Jamison Hurst of Chatterbox Quilts, and today I want to show you how to take some really simple hand embroidery stitches and combine them to make some new and interesting designs. So let's take a look at what I have here for my sample. Well, it doesn't look very exciting right now, but that'll change. Here I've got some chain stitches, pretty obviously, right? And I'm going to show you how you can add other stitches to them to make a more interesting chain stitch or a totally different look. Here I've got a stem stitch that's got some chain stitches, or we call them lazy daisies when we put them together like this, with some French knots on the end. So I'm going to show you how you can add to this design and put those French knots in and make it look really interesting when you're done. So let's start first with this chain stitch on the far left side. So what I'm going to do in this first chain stitch is I'm going to add a really simple running stitch. So I'm going to come up in the middle of that first chain, hopefully in the middle or thereabouts, okay? This is the hardest part, right? Getting the needle where you want it to be, okay? And I can just leave that thread tail and wind it in as I go along, but I'm not going to worry about that just for this demo purpose. And then the next thing I'm going to do is go into the next chain, a little bit less than halfway, okay? About maybe a third of the way, thereabouts. Okay, and I'm going to pull my stitch down here. All right. Notice I'm using a contrasting thread. I guess I should have mentioned that, right? That's what makes it really effective. Okay, and then I'm going back in that same chain closer to the top, so about a third way down from the top, if you will. Okay, I'm going to pull it up, and then I'm going to go down into the next chain. So I'm going between chains, going up and down in the chains as I go along that chain stitch. Now you don't have to be perfect about your needle placement, but you probably want it down in the chain rather than, or up in the chain, depending on which direction you're going, rather than, too close to the edge. It's not very effective. You're not going to be able to see the other color of thread very easily. All right, only a few more here to do. And that one's too high, so let's go down just a little bit more, maybe about there. Okay, go back into that next chain at the top there. Or near the top. I guess I'm not quite at the top chain yet, am I? Okay, let's go in here. There we go. And let's go up in here. So when I come to the last one, if I wanted to, I could put it up higher, to give it a longer look if I wanted to, but I'm just going to stay in about the same area I normally would and bring it down. All right, so you can see how you've got the chain in one color, the running stitch in another. It gives it kind of an interesting look, I think, a little bit different than just your normal chain stitch. All right, I'm going to tie off my threads on the back here. And then I can clip my thread and show you what I want to do with the next chain stitch. Okay, so we have 2 more rows of chain stitches that we can do something in. So let's play around with some French knots for this next one. I'm actually going to knot my thread here. So it's going to hang around the back there without me having to worry about it very much, because there's a lot of tension that you have to use when you're making the French knots, and I just want to make sure that I don't have to worry about the yarn on the back popping out. So again, I'm going inside the chain, so I'm going about the middle of the chain this time. Okay, you don't have to be super precise, but you want to make a French knot, okay? I'm going to wind this about 3 times and go back down close to where I came out, keeping tension on that thread or yarn the whole time. It's always tough to pull that needle down. I have quite a big-eyed needle there, so it's a little bit tough to pull down. There we go. Oh, I think that looks really cute. Now, I'm not going to break my thread at all. I'm just going to continue up the line here to the next chain and make another French knot. So you can see what's happening here, right? We're going to fill this chain of chain stitches with French knots. Okay, you can play around with these. You can play around with the chain a little bit if you want to move it around a little bit. You can do that too. Now, while I'm filling this with French knots, you could be doing another kind of combination, which would be kind of that running stitch where you're coming in and out of the chains, but maybe you're coming in and out of alternate chains, not every chain. Maybe you're coming in out of one and then going underneath before you come up here and go to the next one and go underneath and come up here, leaving a chain with nothing in it. needing to be filled with something like a French knot. So you could combine the running stitch and the French knots in one row of chain stitches. That would be really effective too. Again, I would switch out your color of thread. So in this particular case, I could have the blue running stitches and, you know, alternating, I would have the yellow French knots. And I think that would look really nice as well. So it's surprising what you can come up with when you start combining hand embroidery stitches. So it's a lot of fun just to play around with them, see what you can come up with. And these are not difficult stitches to do at all. These are very basic stitches. So you don't have to learn some really complicated, intricate stitch to make some designs that look like they're complicated and intricate stitches. Okay, here's my last one in here. Trying to pull that eye of the needle through again. There we go. All right, so I've got these little French knots in there. This little guy has got to be kept in place there. All right, so that's something else that you could do. All right, so we've got 2 chain stitches filled with things. We still have 1 chain stitch left there. And what can we do with that? Well, I'm going to keep going with the French knots actually. And again, I'm going to make a little knot here just to keep it on the back of my fabric as we go along. But this time, instead of going inside the chains, I want to do some things on the outside of the chains. So you can put your French knots in different places. Let's start by putting some where the new chains start, the new chain stitch starts. There's a bunch of alliteration there for you. Where the new chain stitch starts, I'm going to put a French knot. All right, then I'm going to go over to the other side and put one on the other side of that same. It's kind of the base of the chain stitch, if you will. All right, and we're going to put that needle back down close to where it came out, keeping tension on that thread all the time. Alrighty, and so you could keep going up and doing that right by the bases where the chain stitches start. And this gives kind of an interesting look as well. Again, if you wanted to put that running stitch down the center, right, you could have the running stitch down the center and you could have the French knots on either side. I could have just done that over there, couldn't I? But I already had this chain stitch stitched out for you to show, so you know, got to use it, right? Okay, so you could just keep doing that. I'll do another set up here, and then I'm going to stop because I want to show you how I made this flower on the one side there. And by the way, if you don't know how to make these stitches and you want some more detailed instructions on how to do that, you can either check up above or you can check below in the description because I have links to videos that show you how to do these different stitches. Okay, we'll do this last one in here. All right, so you've got these going up the outside. Like I said, you could put the running stitch up the center if you wanted to, or you could just leave it like this. Now it's time to take a look at this particular arrangement here. So I've got 3 different hand embroidery stitches going on here. I've got the stem stitch, we've got a chain stitch, which when you do them separately like this and add them together to make a flower, they're called lazy daisy stitches. And then we've got the French knots, of course. So I've already got the stem stitch here. I'm not going to replicate that. Again, if you don't know how to make a stem stitch, check below or check above because I have a video that shows you how to make that. What I do want to show you is how to make these individual little lazy daisy stitches and then how to add the French knots on top. So let's take a look at how you make these individual chain stitches and how they form a nice flower. So you see I've got 3 petals on the go already. So let's start another one over here. So I'm going to come up from the back. I'm just going to make an individual chain stitch. Pull out my thread there. Okay, so we're just going to make that loop and come down again close to where we came out in the first place. Again, if you don't know how to make a chain stitch, check out below in the description or up above, and I'll have a link to a video that shows you how to do that. And we're going to take this down. These can all be different sizes, okay? That's the interesting part about making a flower like this. They don't all have to be the same size because, you know, in nature the petals aren't all the same size, are they? And I can direct that loop where I want it to go. So I want it to go up here somewhere. Let me just pull it back just a little bit there. That's not what we want to have happen. Okay, let's start this again. This isn't working. Let's start this again. So now we're going to work on this particular area here. So if you want to know how to do a stem stitch, check in the description below or up above. I put a link to a video on how to make that. But I want to show you how to make these individual chain stitches to make this lazy daisy stitch, or this flower really. So I'm coming up on this side near the other petal, if you will, and we're going to make an individual chain stitch. Okay, make sure I leave some thread there from thread tail. And we're making a big loop, but it's going to get smaller. Alrighty, so I'm going to pull that down till it's about the size I want. So these petals do not have to be the same size. Alright, so I'm going to make a bigger loop here, just so you can see what I'm doing. Right now it's twisted, it's misbehaving. There we go. So I will put my needle back in where I want that petal to stop. Okay, that's going to stop my petal. So I'm just going to pull that up till it catches. There we go. And there's my petal. Now, how do I stop the petal? How do I keep it in place? Well, you do that by just taking a stitch on the outside of that loop you just made. And when you pull it down, it's going to lock that loop into place. All right. Let's go and make another one on the other side here. I kind of want to have 5 petals on this flower to see where I am here. We're going to get closer to the stem, I hope. A little bit better, better. Okay, there we go. Okay. I'm going to make my loop. It doesn't matter which side your loop goes off to when you're creating it. Well, it's going to the right or the left of your needle, it doesn't matter. But you're going to go down here and you're going to keep your hand on that loop or your finger on that loop so it doesn't get away. And let's say we're going to stop it about there. Okay, so now I can pull it down, right? There we go. And take that final stitch on the outside of that loop to lock it in place. Okay, so we've got our extra little lazy daisy stitches. If I wanted to, I could add some more, you know, down around the stem. It's up to you how many you want to add. But I'm just going to stop there because I want to show you what it looks like when I add some more of those French knots to the edge. So I'll need to change to a different color, right? So we're going to change and use the yellow like I already have been using on those French knots. So I have some yellow thread threaded up here. Going to make a little knot on the back so that those French knots, I should say, aren't going to pop off on me anywhere. And what I want to do is just add them to the edges. So just like I've done with these. So I'm coming up close to the edge. Now, these can be as far out as you want them to be. I mean, you don't want to have them too far out. They look pretty weird. I like to have them fairly close. So I'm going to come up and I'm just going to go about, let's see. Let's try again. 1, 2, 3 times around. You can make them as big as you want. Back down again, and when we pull through, we're going to get a little French knot on the end of that petal. There we go. So we've got one on the end of the petal. I'm going to put one over here as well, and I'm just dragging my thread behind because I'm too lazy to start it again, to start another one again. But normally I would, first off, normally I'd have all my petals made first, and then I'd start adding the French knots around right next to each other, so I don't have to drag my thread all the way over there. All right, so let's put that one down as well. And pull it through. There we go. Okay, so now you can see you've got this little flower. It's got some little French knots around it. If you wanted to, we did do French knots in the chain before. If you want to do that, you could pick another color thread and put them inside if you wanted to. But I think this looks pretty nice just the way it is. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it to be helpful. And if you did, I just wanted to bring your attention to an icon that you'll see underneath my videos. You'll now see that there's a heart with a $ in it. And if you appreciate the work I do on my Chatterbox Quilts YouTube channel, you can decide to offer a donation of $2 or more by clicking on that icon. It helps me to buy supplies to continue making videos like the one you just watched. And thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your quilting friends. And remember to subscribe and hit the bell so you'll be notified the next time I release a new video. And before you go, check out these other videos I've included just for you. For more helpful quilting information, please go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com.